What's going on, FPL managers? Welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scout. I guess it's a podcast as well for those listening audio wise. But yes, it's another game week, and we don't have any midweek fixtures, which is a change. No double game weeks, but I guess it gives us more time to prepare for the next game week. And I'm joined by Ryan, FPL Inzaghi. How are you, buddy?
Doing well, Ted. Yeah, it's great to be back. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That was a normal game week. We've been crying out for so long, to have a normal game week, one where there are no blanks and no doubles, and then we finally get it, and then everyone's crying because of guys like Son and other players absolutely punishing us. So maybe we need to go back to the doubles and blanks again.
Goodness me, yeah. Son killed me as a non-owner. I'm sure there's plenty others out there with the same pain. But I mean, even owning Kulusevski and Kane, who got like double digits, it's just not enough. So
Yeah.
it was pretty painful at the back as well. 1 pointers from many defenders. But I guess that's kind of understandable. Liverpool Man City was an absolutely fantastic game. Couldn't
Mm.
expected too many clean sheets there. So yeah, and Reece James, didn't start. So it is
Yeah.
what it is. It is what it is. I played the wrong goalkeeper. I'm not sure. Ramsdale over Dubravka. Bit of a shocker. Big red arrow for me, but a green arrow for you. So it must have gone well.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting game week because it started off really well. Dan Burn, the absolute hero, with 2 bonus points, would you believe?
Love it.
Um, and I played Dan Burn over Connor Cody, so I felt quite good about that decision. And the game week looked like it was, going to, it got off to a good start. But my green arrow, the size of the green arrow, very quickly evaporated as the week went on, and the color of my arrow really came down to whether Cancelo got 2 bonus points or one. When he was on 2 bonus points, I was on a red arrow. And then when De Bruyne put that chance through to Mahrez right at the end, he went on to 2 bonus points, Cancelo down to one. And so my red arrow turned to a very small green, but green
Well,
is good.
green is good. Slim
Yeah.
margins in FPL, that just shows it.
Yeah.
But yes, it was a week of upsets, a week of drama, and a week of thrashing. So like Man United losing to Everton was a bit of a shock ahead of game week 33, where we're going to eye them up for their double game week. West Ham losing to Brentford. Brentford on the radar. Obviously, they don't have any double game weeks, but definitely need to consider Mbuemo and Tony. Flashback
Mm.
to game week one. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. And then, yes, like drubbings, like Tottenham smashed Villa. I couldn't see that. Like 4-0, Son hat trick, absolutely incredible. They seem the
Mm.
team in form, the attacking form at the moment. So difficult to ignore those guys, even when they have single game weeks. And this is something that we will talk about today. The main theme of this video will be comparing the top 10K template team, which is probably broadly kind of what we all have more or less, versus the like a template free hit team, like full of double game week players, and to see how much upside that team actually has over the premium single game week players. And we'll do a little bit of a prediction and a comparison and see how we get on. But
Mm.
yeah, before we get into that, let's have a word from the sponsors. SoRare Academy, it's a fantasy game that allows you to win SoRare cards, which you can own, and they're like they like have a value, and you can use them to compete in tournaments and stuff, and win some cash, win some prizes. But the SoRare Academy game is free to play. You pick 5 players from the top 5 European leagues. The deadline is 15th of April, this Friday at 11 a.m. UK time. And you can pick from all of the 5 European leagues. So we've got Lewandowski here, Dembele, Kevin De Bruyne, Cuadrado, and Ter Stegen. But yeah, free to play. Try your luck. It's a fantasy game. If you know the European leagues more than anyone else, then you're probably going to do well. And yeah, you can wear some of these cards. So yeah, give it a go. But on to the subject of the video, and we're going to start with the top 10K template. Now, huge caveat here. This is just the 15 highest owned players in the game. I haven't made it realistic for cash. I haven't made it realistic for number of teams. So you can see there's 4 Tottenham players here. But I haven't really bothered to change that because Doherty, it seems like he's out for the season with a knee injury. So obviously you've got those 3 Spurs players there. This now it looks like a fantastic team. That's because it probably costs about 5 million more than um, than I can afford, at least.
Yeah.
But I think from this sort of the exercise that we're completing, I think if you change Son to like a Madison, that would be a legitimate compromise. And I think they probably have roughly the same expected points this week, seeing as Madison has a double game week. So it doesn't look too dissimilar from our teams, Ryan, does it? And that's kind of to be expected. Big at the back, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Cancelo and James is a beastly back line with Ramsdale in goal. And then Salah, Saka, Kulusevski and Son in midfield with Kane and Breuer. I was surprised to see Breuer so highly owned. He's like 65% in the top 10k. I played him ahead of Weghorst because I think he's just been a little bit terrible at the moment. Weghorst is like 50% ownership. So I've just tried to maximise the ownership here. But it looks like a good team, doesn't it? And I think you'd be pretty happy having this ahead of Game Week 33, even if there's only 3 doublers.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we often say in FPL, get good players from good teams. And the good players from the good teams in this top 10k template, they also have good fixtures, which is a little concerning for managers who are on a free hit. And we'll talk about what a free hit template team might look like later on. And it's going to be a really interesting comparison between the two teams and what we're kind of predicting they will be able to score. But just talking about the top 10k template, I mean, the Liverpool fixture at home to Manchester United is a good fixture for Liverpool. We saw United play against Everton, and just the contrast between that match and the City and Liverpool match was really painful as a United fan. United just looked like they were bereft of motivation and energy. They couldn't keep the ball. Everton had no confidence, but United allowed them to somehow find confidence through just a complete lack of ability from United's part. And seeing that match and then comparing it to Liverpool and City, it's not comforting as a United fan. You see that fixture against Liverpool and you think that Trent and Robbo can easily keep a clean sheet and they might get attacking returns. And we saw what Salah did last time when they played at Old Trafford. So that's a great fixture for Liverpool. Cancelo at home to Brighton. Again, City's defence have been quite strong this season. Brighton in attack. They pulled out some surprises against against Arsenal. I didn't see that result coming. But prior to that match, Brighton have struggled to score goals. So, you know, it's a good fixture for Cancelo. There's a question mark about Reece James, and perhaps that's where an advantage might be found. But yeah, the fixture for Spurs is great as well. So the top 10k template, they've got some great players with some great fixtures.
Even though they might be just single game weeks, I completely agree. There's definitely capacity here for all of these premium players to do really well. I agree with you. What you're saying about Man United, like I try and come of it from a different lens because maybe as a fan, you may be overly critical of your own side, but I think like just through the nature of it, Everton like a really poor side this year. I thought Pickford was just absolutely fantastic. Like he just prevented everything, and it's his sort of once or twice a season outstanding performance. I thought Man United were unlucky not to score. I think Ronaldo had a fantastic chance that he probably should have put away, but I think it was an outstanding save from Pickford. But it just goes to show that when Man United are playing a poor side, they've got Norwich in this double game week. They do have, chances to score. But I think it was a while since they had a shot on target, and that was the main issue for them, I think. But in terms of creating chances, I think that seemed pretty prevalent in that match. And Gordon's goal was a massive deflection as well. So, glass half full approach. Yes, I completely agree with you. Man United are poles apart from City and Liverpool, but you've got to fancy them against Norwich side. Having said that, Norwich did beat Burnley. I didn't expect that. I thought Burnley would beat Norwich, but maybe they're a bit in form. I don't think that really changes our perception of Norwich.
Not really, no. But I thought United looked most dangerous in that match when Everton had the ball. And Everton were making quite a lot of mistakes coming out of their own end. And United were able to counter. and create chances through Everton giving the ball away rather than United breaking Everton down. And I think as the game grew on, and Everton were kind of increasingly satisfied with the scoreline, United found it really difficult to break down the Everton defence as they kind of retreated deeper and deeper into their own half. And Norwich will do the same. Norwich will sit deep. They will allow United to have the ball, and they'll say, "Go on, try and score against us." And United had chances against Watford, and they couldn't put it away at home. They've had chances against Everton, and they haven't been able to capitalise on that. There is a repeated pattern of United creating chances against these lesser teams, but struggling to find the back of the net. And so, yeah, I'm wondering whether that fixture against Norwich is as good as what we might think it is.
I think it's really interesting because if you just take away all the context of recent results, how they've struggled recently, recent form, and you just put that fixture down on paper, I think a lot of people will just dive on it. And you could argue that it's not as good as people think because of Man United's form, but on like a one game like volatility with variance, I think Man United could easily put 4 past Norwich on a particular day. So it's really coming at it through the floors and ceilings, and we'll come to that later. But if you compare that sort of fixture in isolation to Spurs against Brighton, Spurs have been absolutely fantastic going forwards, scoring 4 goals seemingly every single game, and like the top 10k template clearly shows that the Spurs attacking guys are really, really popular at the moment. Yes, you might not be able to have all 3 of these because of budgetary constraints, but it seems like either people have Son and Kulusevski, or Son and Kane, or Kane and Kulusevski. Would you compromise on getting double game week players ahead of Spurs? I'm not sure I would.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. I mean, we put together a free hit draft for game week 33, and there was that tension the whole time. How can you leave Son out, for instance, after scoring a hat-trick and the recent form that he's been in, and how good Spurs have been as an attacking team recently? How can you leave a player like that out at home to Brighton in favour of someone like a James Ward-Prowse, who's got a double game week, or even in favour of someone like a Maddison, who might be a potential minutes risk, and so therefore is the double as good as what it might seem if he only starts one of the 2 fixtures? So I think it's hard to leave the Spurs players out. If I was on a free hit, I would probably want to have one of them. I'd probably lean towards having either Son or Kane, depending on, the midfielders and forwards you wanted to pick. And because of the lack of forwards, you might lean more towards Kane.
Yeah, agreed. I think it'd be scary to go without one, even 2, to be honest. But I think Brighton, the fixture is really suitable to Spurs. They've done very well historically. It's a home game for them. Brighton are a high possession team. Yes, they might not do that well with the ball. They might not construct as many big chances as other teams, but it will really suit Spurs' style of play because they're a counter-attacking side, first and foremost. And if you're playing against a side that has lots of possession but doesn't do that much of it, tends to lose the ball in the final third, then Spurs can really capitalise on that. And it probably is a Son game, to be honest. But equally so, we've seen that the points are shared around between those 3, and I think any 1, any 2 of those 3, I think are probably fine, because you never know. Brighton shocked Arsenal. Yes, it was a bit of an anomaly, I'd say. I think there were unusual circumstances about Arsenal's disallowed goal, and I think Mwepu's goal was really, really just a thunderbolt, and Ramsdale didn't have much chance. So I think it was just one of those games that went against Arsenal. I thought they looked good. Let's just say that. I didn't watch it live, but I saw the highlights. It seemed like they were playing well. But maybe Brighton got a bit lucky. That's my point.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is a good fixture for Spurs playing Brighton at home. I'm just looking at the other fixtures because for me, a Spurs attacker, if not 2, as you've mentioned, would remain on my free hit. And I think that's a great fixture. We've talked about Liverpool playing United at home. I think that's a great fixture. What do you make of the fixture for City and for Chelsea there, in particular, Cancelo and James, because there's obviously Champions League and the FA Cup to consider as well, and that might be playing on people's minds with the free hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more difficult the fixture, the more likely they are to play. So I kind of sort of wish that James would play against Arsenal because it's a tough fixture. Whereas maybe the ease of Brighton, that maybe the perception of it means that Pep can rotate. But again, we're just second guessing ourselves on. I think we just have to play them and hope for the best. And Cancelo's played like 95% of the games this season. He recovers very quickly apparently, so there's no reason why he can't play that. I don't think the big worry for me is James, because it seems like he plays midweek in the big games and that's rested, as he was annoyingly against Southampton. But then an Arsenal fixture is tough, and I would imagine that Tuchel would want to get a result there. So hopefully James plays 70 minutes midweek and then starts against Arsenal. That's what I would say. But you're absolutely right to bring that up, because rotation is a key part of this. Like all the big teams play every 3 or 4 days for the rest of the season, so it's going to be pretty mental trying to accommodate and second guess everything. So yeah, I would be pretty happy if I had this team. Obviously, it's over budget, but
how close do you come to this team?
I'm like 5 million short because of Son.
But in terms of personnel, I mean, looking at this starting 11 there, you've got Laporte instead of Cancelo.
Yeah, I don't have Robertson. But that's pretty much it. And maybe a Maddison instead of a Son. And then it's something like that anyway. But very close. It's like 2 or 3 players different. So yeah, how creative I've been as a manager, just trying to go for the template. But yours probably isn't too much different anyway, is it?
That's right. I think the only difference for me is Robertson, Cancelo, and Kulusevski. So, mostly the same.
So, okay, here's the final question for this side before we move on to the free hit draft. Who would you play out of Breuer or Weghorst if you had to choose one of them? Because both of them are pretty non-existent at the moment in terms of FPL points.
Oh, I think Weghorst has probably got the better fixtures with West Ham and Southampton. Breuer has Arsenal and Burnley, but after seeing the way Burnley have played recently and Weghorst is coming off, and it seems to be a bit of a trend. Like I was looking back at Chris Wood's statistics at Burnley before he left, and he would often come off around the 60th minute mark as well. And, Sean Dyche, he does have options. He's trying to get Vidra back into the team and return to full fitness. So he's obviously got Jay Rodriguez there as well. And Ashley Barnes, I think, is still picking up a wage at Burnley. So he's got some options. The Burnley attack has not been great. A pretty lifeless performance against Norwich this week. I would be playing Breuer over Weghorst. That's my answer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. But I mean, I was at the Southampton game against Chelsea at the weekend, and so I couldn't tell you how bad Southampton were. They just left tons and tons of space. Armstrong and Adams were pretty lackluster at the top. So I don't know whether Breuer is going to get anything against Arsenal or even Burnley, but I think he's probably the slightly better option than Weghorst. I think Weghorst had one shot against Norwich. The bottom of the table team. Just really sort of says it all, really. And the points, the goals are coming from elsewhere at Burnley, Cornet and another player. So I think people will be selling Weghorst en masse, even ahead of a double game week, which seems crazy, but yeah. Okay, let's move on to the free hit draft that we've come up with. Obviously, this might be completely different to your own expectations, but we've got Schmeichel in goal against Newcastle away, Everton away. I thought Leicester, got kept a clean sheet at the weekend. No, they didn't. He got a penalty save, didn't he, against Palace? But to keep Palace down to 1 goal, I thought was fairly decent. And Newcastle and Everton don't tend to score that many, I don't think. So it just shows his goalkeeping prowess. And potentially some clean sheets there for Leicester as well. We've gone double Newcastle defence.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure how solid that is. But Newcastle have been fairly solid defensively, haven't they, Ryan? And they got their clean sheet at the weekend against Wolves, who don't tend to score that much. But before that, even they were top 4 sides for expected goals conceded in the last 4 or 5 game weeks. So it could yield returns, but I mean that floor is probably 4 points for both of them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Newcastle's defense has been all right. I mean, they conceded late to Chelsea. They're only a couple of minutes away from a clean sheet at Stamford Bridge, which isn't easy to do. I think they probably should have kept a clean sheet against Everton. Everton were down to 10 men, and they found a way to concede in that match as well. They only conceded 1 goal away to West Ham, which isn't an easy fixture. So, yeah, Newcastle's defense has looked good, but when you're only conceding the 1 goal, it's a bit disappointing. Yeah, like there's, yeah, you kind of have to temper your expectations with the Newcastle defenders. Guys like Dan Burn, he did have a shot in the box against Wolves, but I think with Dan Burn, it's a clean sheet or bust. Fabian Schär, he's on a few set pieces. He's shown an eye for goal recently, so perhaps there's more attacking upside with Fabian Schär. And if you only wanted to go for the one Newcastle defender, there's probably an argument to go for Schär over Dan Burn. Yeah, but those fixtures at home, Newcastle at home have been quite strong. So there's every chance they get a clean sheet. I'm wondering how much Brendan Rodgers rotates his Leicester side in that fixture at home. Away to Newcastle. That could be a factor.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Newcastle will benefit from not being involved in any other competition. So, yeah, and as you say, both home games, it's pretty. They're making it a fortress at St James's Park. So, I think it's some decent fixtures for Newcastle. Just to remind everyone that maybe who aren't aware, the teams that double in game week 33 will be Leicester against Newcastle and Everton, Burnley against West Ham and Southampton, Arsenal against Southampton and Chelsea, Man United against Norwich and Liverpool, Southampton against Arsenal and Burnley, Brighton with a really tricky double with Spurs and Man City, and then Newcastle with Leicester and Palace. So we've got some teams there that don't incorporate the traditional sort of big 5, big 6, apart from maybe Arsenal and Man United. Liverpool and City all have single fixtures, as we saw in the previous side. So the main question we have is, do we fully load up on double game week players, or do we stick and hedge our bets with some key single game week players that are in really good form, such as Harry Kane in this side, who just has a single game week fixture, but he's the only player in this side that does. So for the benefit of the podcast viewers, to go through the entire team, we already said Schmeichel in goal in the double game week, double Newcastle defence, and then Gabriel from Arsenal against Southampton away, Chelsea away. And then in midfield, we've doubled up with Man United, Bruno Fernandes and Jadon Sancho. We've got Maddison and Barnes against Newcastle and Everton. And then Saka, Southampton and Chelsea. And then up front, pretty beefy front line of Ronaldo in his double game week, and then Harry Kane with his single game week fixture. But that midfield is pretty juicy in terms of the number of fixtures, Ryan. How do you feel about having, triple Man United attack? It's pretty bold, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And, we're tripled up on Manchester United, doubled up on Leicester, doubled up on Newcastle. I should say tripled up on Leicester if you count Schmeichel in goals. We're investing heavily in unreliable teams, if you like. If we had triple City or triple Liverpool, there's a massive difference there versus triple United, who could explode. That's the point, right? They could explode, but they could also deliver nothing. They could also lose 1-0 at home to Norwich and then get flogged by Liverpool away. Leicester similarly. Maddison recently has shown that he's, from an FPL point of view, he's capable of those big hauls, and that's what you want to scoop up on a free hit. You want these players who are capable of scooping up big hauls, and I think we've got them here. Fernandes and Sancho and Ronaldo are the 3 best Manchester United FPL assets. Maddison and Barnes likewise for Leicester. So I think we've got the right players. I don't think there's anyone here that I would want to change.
Let's talk about
Yeah,
Dewsbury Hall from Leicester, because he's like 4.4, 4.5 million, and he got a goal and assist at the weekend.
yeah.
And we were discussing before stream, I wonder why he got attacking returns that game. And by watching the highlights, he was playing very centrally. He's very similar player to Maddison, very technically able to drift past players, very decent shot on him. But it's the first time in a while I've seen him play centrally. And I know you mentioned that he plays centrally against Man United when Barnes was on the left, Dewsbury Hall was on the centre, and Maddison was on the right.
Mm.
I wonder whether being on the right-hand side makes Maddison a less appealing FPL option. But we can't guarantee that Dewsbury Hall plays centrally in the upcoming games when Barnes comes back, because Brendan Rodgers might want to change it up. And I think that's what he indicated before the match. He said he wanted to make a number of changes because of the rotation in Europe. So it's quite difficult to predict whether Dewsbury Hall becomes a legitimate FPL option or not. But for that price, it might be worth taking the punt.
Yeah, it is for sure. I think though, if you're on a free hit, you want to go all in and use your budget on. And I think with this team, we come quite a way under budget, so I don't think money is an issue. But yeah, if you're looking for a cheaper option in midfield, I think Dewsbury Hall is okay. It's interesting that you've mentioned there his role in the team and how the inclusion or exclusion of guys like Maddison and Barnes impact that. I think whilst the position that he played in the game against Crystal Palace was similar to that in which he played against United, the role and the role he played in the team was quite different. Without Harvey Barnes there, I think his role in the team changes. Maddison and Barnes, there seems to be like they're quite fluid. So Maddison was on the right against Manchester United, but he was on the left when he crossed that ball for Iheanacho to score the goal. So he seems to kind of drift into different spaces, Maddison, and not really be tied down to a static role. And I think having Dewsbury Hall in there, who's a little bit more industrious, I think gives Maddison that opportunity to be a little bit more attacking and free. So I like Dewsbury Hall as a budget option. But I think from an FPL point of view, Maddison and Barnes are just in a different league than him.
Who do you rate out of Maddison or Barnes? Because Barnes has got 3 attacking returns in his last 6. And Maddison has 3 in his last 3. So he's in form. But before that, he had a couple of returns. So Maddison seems like the guy who is a little bit more in form. Barnes is a little bit more sporadic. But it seems like the perception changes of Barnes from game to game. One game he's really good, one game he's a bit lackluster. So from a reliability perspective, would you go Maddison and spend a little bit of cash extra?
I think it comes back to what we've already discussed with Maddison and Barnes. Barnes gets a lot of small chances, and the conversion rate of the small chances is quite low. And so it's no wonder that from week to week, his output and conversions will fluctuate quite a bit. In any given game week, he might have a few small chances and not be able to put away any. But in another game week, he gets the equivalent amount of small chances. But in that particular game, he's able to find the back of the net. And so the frustration with Barnes, I think, doesn't necessarily factor in the style of player that he is. If I had neither player, I would want Leicester to come out of Europe, to drop out of Europe. And I think the decision becomes a lot clearer because we've already touched on how Maddison's probably more of a rotation risk than Harvey Barnes. Of course, Barnes was rested over the weekend, but he's had his rest now. So I would pick Maddison over Barnes. I'd be even more confident in doing that if Leicester were knocked out of Europe. But Ted, I want to ask you a question because this is something I'm considering. What about both?
What about both? Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your chip strategy, of course, because we have to gear up for 36 and 37. If you've got loads of chips to play, you don't need to worry about that. But those of us who only have maybe 1 free hit left or even 0 chips left, we have to plan for the future double game weeks. And Leicester are a pretty sure side to do that because they have double game weeks in all of the key double game weeks coming up, so 33, 36 and 37. But the midfield spots are pretty valuable at the moment, and there's plenty of players to pick. Son and Kulusevski really, really powerful at the moment. Saka's a popular pick. Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, Foden, and then these Leicester guys. I'm probably missing someone like Havertz as well. So there's plenty of players to choose from. I wonder whether doubling up on Leicester is a bit overkill, but certainly in this double game week, Newcastle and Everton, absolutely fantastic fixtures. I think I would be happy with just one of them, and I think I would agree with you siding with Maddison over Barnes, because I think he's just more central to everything. And I think
Yeah.
even though you say he's having small chances, I think he has that creativity as well, which probably maybe Barnes has to a lesser extent. He tends to sort of shoot more often. But Maddison is so technically capable, he's actually more likely to score those small chances than Barnes is. So, but Maddison, even though because of the rotation risk, I'm not 100% sure whether as the games go by, whether I still buy into that caveat, because it seems like Maddison's playing quite a few minutes in Europe and in the Premier League and seems to be coping quite well. So I
Yeah.
don't know whether we're just hoping, overestimating the minutes he's going to play, especially with Barnes's rest. But yeah, from an ability perspective, I think I would always choose Maddison.
Yeah, for sure. I was mentioning that Harvey Barnes, I think, is the one who has more of the small chances in
Okay,
terms of,
I
yeah,
think they both
output.
do, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think they both do. I think that's just through the nature of the way that Leicester play. Without Vardy on the pitch, it's very difficult to construct big chances because there's not a great outlet. I think Daka and
Mm.
Iheanacho do a job, but they tend to shoot from further away than Vardy tries to get in behind the last defender on the last line. And Maddison's been absolutely fantastic in recent years of just about threading the ball through. And Vardy's one-on-ones, he lives off those sorts of chances. So it's difficult. It's difficult to construct big chances without him on the pitch. I think Leicester have to rely on the conversion being greater than their opponents to
Yeah.
get results. And Maddison is perfectly capable of doing that, as we've seen in recent weeks. So yes, we haven't really talked about Saka at Arsenal yet, and I wonder how much of a necessity he is in a free hit draft, because Arsenal we've seen in the last couple of weeks having struggling results. So they've lost twice. And I wonder, because we've seen, when we've been doing these videos in the last few weeks, right, we've seen Arsenal top of the small chances, not very good for big chances. I wonder, because they've just totally relied on scoring wonder goals, whether those results, whether those goals start creeping down, whether that conversion starts struggling a little bit, and whether the Arsenal options are still as good as they once were.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think of the Watford game when Arsenal won 3-0 and they had an XG of less than 1. They were putting these shots into the top corner from outside the box, and that's just not sustainable. Arsenal take a lot of shots, and players like Saka in particular take a lot of shots. But the sustainability of the conversion rate that we've seen them produce so far this season, I think it's unsustainable, as you've alluded to just then. And with the injuries to guys like Thomas Partey and Kieran Tierney as well, that's quite unsettling for them. They were playing Xhaka at left back against Brighton. Yeah, it's not looking too good for Arsenal, when a couple of weeks ago we were saying that, it looks like they've got the top 4 sewn up. And I think guys like Saka, whilst they still represent great value and Arsenal still have double game weeks to come, that is probably a position on a free hit that you could question. So if you don't have Saka in the team, where do you go? Do you turn to another double game week player? Do you turn to a Ward-Prowse, or maybe even a Newcastle midfielder? Or do you go for a single game week player? Because apart from Newcastle, Leicester, Arsenal and United, where do you turn on a double game week?
I mean, the initial draft we had Son in, didn't we? Instead of
Mm.
Saka, and Son would be, in his form, a fantastic option as that fifth mid. And that means you probably have to free up Harry Kane for the likes of Sam Maximan or Chris Wood, or whoever you want to pick. I mean, those two are decent options, but you can sort of float it around and see what you prefer. But I think Son is really suited to that Brighton game. So if you wanted to get rid of Saka, that would be absolutely fine. But I think, when we talk about the small chance conversion and the way that a player plays, it's very, very difficult to just think like one dimensionally about the stats. But when you also view the player playing, and you can see what talent he is. I mean, Saka's such a talent. Like, we watched the highlights, and it's like he crossed the ball into the back post on a set piece, and Arsenal were really, really unlucky not to score that. I think it was Gabriel that connected. It just shows that he's involved in the game. He
Yeah.
does have that technical ability. He is going to construct chances for his teammates, and anything can happen in double game week. So I think Saka's definitely a perfectly reasonable option to have. I just wonder skeptically about whether Arsenal start regressing a little bit to their overperformance. So it's an interesting dilemma. I think there's more pressing things to worry about on this free hit team. If you want to go all in, having triple Man United is probably my biggest worry.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider going for like an alternate premium single game weeker, like a De Bruyne, like Salah, like whoever, like a Son maybe, instead of maybe one of these Man United players?
Yeah, I think so. And that if I still had my free hit, the reason what like the team that I would probably go for would be a mixture of double game week players and single game week players. Because the single game week players like Kevin De Bruyne, we've already spoken about Cancelo, and even the Liverpool players, they've all got good fixtures in 33. So I would go for a mix of both double and single. But then that comes back to the top 10K template. If you make a couple of transfers to that team, how far from that team would your free hit team be? I don't think it would be too difficult. So that's why personally I'm against the free hit in 33, because this free hit template for me, it feels like, well, we'll talk about floors and ceilings. It feels like there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of risk with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on, because we've talked about two different types of team, full of premium singlers with the top 10k template as it currently stands, and now with this free hit draft full of double game week players. Which is best? How do we decide whether this free hit has enough upside to actually pull the trigger on that free hit chip? So we've constructed some tables from the last two teams. One is free hit and one is non-free hit. That's the template at the bottom. And we've just come up with some numbers ourselves. You guys might completely disagree with our numbers, but the floors and the ceilings. The floor is the number of FPL points that is probably about the minimum, the realistic minimum that players might get, and then the ceiling is probably the realistic upside. Like if something went really well for this player in a double game week, for example, let's say the amount of points that they could realistically get. So what you will notice is that the free hit team, all of the floors are much higher than the single game week players in the non-free hit team. That's because they've got two fixtures. The appearance points alone count for 3 or 4 points, depending on how many goals these defenders concede, how many bookings, etc., etc. But it's interesting, I often find this, that the ceilings are largely similar for all of these players. You've got premium single game week players that could hit 10 to 20 points, anything in that region, if the game week went well. I'm not saying that they all will get those points. It's just the maximum they could realistically get in a single game week fixture. Whereas I think the top table, full of double game week players, but not necessarily full of in-form teams, those ceilings maybe are a little bit understated compared to what a free hit ceiling would be if that team was filled with premium players like Salah, De Bruyne, Kane, Son. If those guys had double game weeks, I think those ceilings would be a little bit higher. So yes, I think maybe we're a little bit generous with the ceilings, to be honest. Fernandez, 22 points maximum possible. It could happen. It could happen if he gets a brace or an assist against Norwich and maybe an assist against Liverpool. It could happen, Ryan. Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, he's done it before. If we think back to the double game week 21, I think it was, when a lot of people went for Bruno captain, and then there was the split with the Ronaldo captain. I think he scored something like 24 points in that double game week then. So he's definitely got the potential. I think you're right to highlight the comparison between the flaws of the free hit team and the flaws of the non-free hit team. And what my eye is drawn to looking at this is the flaw of guys like Trent, Robertson, and even James. So James is a minute's risk, and so his floor is listed as a 0 because he's not guaranteed to actually get on the pitch. You could probably argue and say that it's more likely he'll make a cameo as the floor, and so you can argue that it's a 1-point floor. But that's a lot less than what we've given guys like Fabian Schär and Dan Burn. But contrast the floor with the ceilings for the same players, and Cancelo's ceiling of 15 is higher than any of the double game week defenders' ceilings. And similar for Trent, and Robertson comes quite close. So that's where the risk is, I think, that guys like James, who is a potential minutes risk, the floor is less, but the ceiling is quite similar.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we construct these ceilings, and I think they're all very fairly realistic. Because even if you've got worse players in the top table, that might be less likely to actually come to fruition. Whereas the ceilings at the bottom, you've got better players that are attempting to reach those ceilings, and I think that maybe is more likely to happen. But it's less likely to happen in a single game week because it's like half the chance, isn't it? Thinking about it. But it's a really big contrast between the number of fixtures with worse teams and then, fewer fixtures with better teams. So it's a really tricky one. And we've tried to sort of construct an infographic here that will show or demonstrate how much upside we actually get from the free hit chip. So let me just describe it to you. It's basically a box and whisker chart, but it uses the information that we've just seen in those tables, and it sums up all of the ceilings for each of those players, sums up all of the floors for each of those players, and then constructs an average. So the points on the left-hand side, we've got from 0 to 170, 180. You can see that the free hit team actually has a much higher floor, and I think that's to be expected. But it also has a much higher average and a higher ceiling. It's whether those three elements being higher is sufficiently higher enough to justify playing the free hit. And you never know. The ceilings might not be met by those out-of-form teams such as Man United, Leicester maybe to a lesser extent, but Newcastle defence, like Burnley, you could go Pope. It's very, very difficult. You're gambling with the number of fixtures. And if it went really badly with a free hit team, you could argue that the non-free hit team could actually get a better score than the free hit team. But if you think about it from a global perspective, I think if everything sort of went as expected, I'm not sure the free hit team would get enough upside from the free hit. How many points do you reckon you need to get from a free hit team to be able to justify it, Ryan?
I was going to ask you the exact same question. I had it ready to go. So in thinking of the question, I also thought of the answer. I would be happy with a points gained of 25 plus on a free hit.
Yeah, I think that's fairly reasonable, because if we think about when we play the free hit chip normally in a season, it's normally something like in a blank game week where some big teams blank and you try and load up on, lesser teams that maybe there's only 3 or 4 fixtures in the game week. But realistically, if none of those players do anything, you're probably going to get an increase of around 22 in just an appearance points, maybe 25 if someone does something. And then you've got the room to actually improve from that. So I think 25 points is roughly about right, but it also gives you the capacity to get more than that. And if this is saying that you're only on average going to get 10 to 15 point advantage over the non-free hitters, then I'm not 100% sure it's worth it. But anything can happen in double game week fixtures. And
Yeah, for
uh,
sure. And we talk a lot about, it's team dependent. It's based on how your team is looking. But this non-free hit team is the top 10K template, which
yeah,
I think captures most of our teams, most of us engaged managers. Even though I'm quite a distance away from the top 10K, my team has 8 of the same 11 starting players. So we're talking about team dependency. I think this graph really helpfully captures most of our teams. And you need to make the call on whether you think there's enough upside, whether you think there is 25 plus points on offer for you in playing your free hit this game week. I played my free hit back in game week 27 as part of my wildcard triple captain bench boost plan. And I think the average, according to live FPL that week for free hitters, I think the average gain was something like 10 or 11 points. And that was a really disappointing free hit week, game week 27. And we're saying here that we're projecting 15 points. Did you say, Ted?
yeah, roughly about 15 points. It could be less than that, to be completely honest. But yes, I think the difference, as you've been saying, is the big teams do not blank in this game week, and unlike when we usually play the free hit, I think you don't have that security that you know that you can't be punished by the teams that you're removing or not focusing on. This is a big gamble, I think, for free
Yeah.
hitters. But if you have lots of chips left, if you have a free hit, if you have a wild card and a bench boost, and maybe even a triple captain, if you have the whole suite of chips, you need to find available game weeks to play those chips. And I think, don't get me wrong, playing the free hit in 33, if you've got a free hit and it's the best time to do it, because the bench boost and the triple captain might be better to play later down the line once you've wildcarded, then I think it's fine to free hit, because why not? You're getting tons and tons of fixtures, and as you can see on this chart, the floor is much, much higher. So even if your players flop, you're going to get those appearance points to bring that score up over and above what your single game week players do. So it's not going to be the end of the world if they do flop.
Yeah, that's right. So if you are set on playing your free hit this week, right? Because we've been talking about, the risks and rewards in playing it. But if you're set on playing your free hit in 33, how do you mitigate the risk of being outscored by the non-free hit team?
You could very well hedge your bets and go with 2 or 3 premium options. Bring in Son and Kane and KDB if that makes you feel better. But I don't think you need to do that, because the comfort of the 2 fixtures, if you know that player's going to play both games, if you're going to pick a nailed player, then I think the floor being sufficiently high does give you that comfort. And I think, when you play your free hit chip, the ceiling is really, really high. So why not go for it with lots of double game week players and see what happens? I don't think you can be hurt that much as a free hit player, but you never know. You never know. And if you wanted to hedge your bets because it made you feel better and just go for 3 premium players instead of the Man United guys, maybe go for 1, maybe 2 Man United guys instead, then I think that's absolutely justified. There are multiple ways you can play this. And I think it was going to be a really interesting game week nonetheless, because I'm only going with like 3 or 4 double game weeks double game week players, and I'm going to feel pretty bereft when it comes to like Monday night, feeling pretty jealous of everyone else the rest of the week with all of these fixtures still to play.
Yeah, but I was looking on live FPL today to see how many the top 10K average had of double game week players in 33, and it was telling me that the average is 5 double game week players. But that included Ramsdale and Dubravka, and you can obviously only play 1. That also included Broja and Weghorst, and I'm not too concerned there. And I think it also included, I don't know if it was a Kieran Tierney, but it was another defender whose spot or position is kind of under question now as well. So I'll have to go back to live FPL and confirm that final position. But the number, as we always say, is a little kind of, it needs to be interpreted. It's a little misleading, I should say, because 5 double game week players, well, you can't play 2 goalkeepers unless you're on the bench boost. So 5 automatically becomes 4. And does Veghorst count? Don't know.
Really interesting. I think so. It basically means if you want to target this double game week, I think many people are going to be the same boat, and the only way to do it is really to target with a free hit. But the free hit might be better played later on in the season, and that's the justification I'm coming up with. I don't know. We don't know whether Man City will double in 36 or 37, and that's the main reason why I'm probably going to save my free hit. I think you can get the most double game weeks if you free hit in 33, because most of us are going to be building up our teams for 36 with lots of premium players. And you can also take hits to get in Leicester, Villa, Palace players for 37. If you wanted to do that and you don't mind taking hits, you can get the most double game week fixtures out of those 3 double game weeks. But it's very aggressive, it's very attacking. I'm not 100% sure whether it suits me, and I think I'll probably be saving my free hit chip, because non free hitters can gain some comfort from this chart. For example, the bit on the right, the orange, the non free hit team that we came up with, the top 10k template. The floor is lower, yes, the average is lower, but it's probably not too much lower than what a free hit team is going to construct. So I think there's some comfort there for everyone else.
I think it changes though because Liverpool play in the FA Cup and Champions League before their game week 33 fixture. I think City likewise. Chelsea also have the FA Cup. So if there's some injuries there, if Robbo or Trent or Salah or Cancelo get injured, someone in the non-free hit top 10k template, if there's a couple of injuries there, or if it looks like there might be some rotation for whatever reason, suddenly the gap between the free hit and non-free hit starts to increase, and therefore the viability of playing it also increases.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, that the results and the condition of players after the midweek games really does affect this. And worth keeping an eye on what happens in the Champions League. And then maybe we will be pushed into a free hit. Like, who knows? During this hectic schedule for those premium teams, it might give you a little bit of relief. Really good point. But right now, before I know that, I'm edging towards not free hitting at the moment. Okay, let's finish the video by talking about our own transfer plans. We'll start with you, Ryan. We've got your team up here: Ramsdale, Alexander-Arnold, James, and Dan Burn, the hero for you this week. Saka, Salah, Son. Oh, Son, jealous of you. And Harvey Barnes already with the captain's armband on him in his double game week. That's decent. Interesting to hear your thoughts about why you're captaining Barnes over the likes of Saka, or even a Son or Kane. And then your forward line: Weghorst, Breuer, and Kane with that single game week fixture. So yes, talk to me.
Yeah, so I've got 2 free transfers. I banked a transfer last game week, and heading into game week 32, I wanted to bank a transfer because my plan was to sell Son for Bruno Fernandes. And to fund that move, I needed to make a 0.5 saving. And I was looking at a Cody to a Wes Fofana as a Leicester defender, knowing they've got so many double game weeks to come. And then Son goes and scores a hat-trick, and Bruno and United play the way they did. And it's very difficult to separate ourselves from the outcome and the statistics and the underlying data and what we've seen fairly consistently from guys like Bruno. And right now, I'm completely unsure whether I'll go down that path and go Son to Bruno. Bruno would then be my captain. I think he's probably the most outstanding captain in double game week 33. And if you've got Bruno, I'd have no drama with putting the captain's armband on him. So I'm not sure whether I'll do the Son to Bruno move, because I'm seeing a lot of teams scrambling to try and get Son in. And so I start thinking, well, why am I trying to get this guy out? Am I trying to force him out? And it feels a little bit like that right now. Spurs have good fixtures to come. He doubles again in 36. But what goes against Son is the fact that he is so expensive. And with the money that I've got tied up in him, it makes getting a Cancelo or a Robertson in, very, very difficult. So the Son question is a big one. I don't have a clear answer to it. I could go Veghorst to a Gelhardt and then a Connor Cody up to a Cancelo. I could do that for free. It doesn't increase my double game week players this week. In fact, it decreases them. But I'm not too concerned by that because I don't have any chips left. And I'm more concerned with building for 36 than I am for 33. So, yeah, hopefully you're able to track that. I'm keen to hear
Yeah,
what your
yeah.
thoughts are on Son.
So what's your chip strategy? How many chips do you have left, and when you're intending to play them?
My chip strategy is well and truly gone. I'm more focused on the chips I get from McDonald's now. I've got none left. I've got no chips left.
No chips left, crikey. So you're going to have to hedge your bets a little bit by. I think, when we're in the double game week hysteria, we tend to ignore the fixtures leading up to the double game weeks. And I think if you can try and get a team that comforts yourself in dealing with all of those weeks and sort of halfway accommodating it in the actual double game weeks, and I think you'll be fine. I like the Veghorst down to Gelhardt and bringing Cancelo in. You're going to get a decent premium back line. I think other people are really considering getting KDB in, and I wonder whether Son could be a cash cow for you to do that from maybe game week 34. But again, you're removing a really decent player in Son for another really decent player in form in KDB. And I guess the issue you have is that you have basically three premium, very expensive midfielders and forwards, whereas probably most other teams have just two. And that swallows up all of your cash. And I think, me looking at your team, I'm incredibly jealous that you have Son. But maybe you look at teams with Kulusevski in and go, oh, I wish I kind of had Kulusevski because I could do a lot with that money.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to determine which is best. More points for a particular player like Son, or 4 or 5 million that you can spend upgrading better players in your squad that might bridge the gap between Kulusevski and Son. Really, really difficult. But
Yeah.
in your position, I would be tempted to try and get KDB because City are going to be so on the ball trying to win the league now. They need to be on it. They need to win every single game to the rest of the season. I think getting 2 or 3 City players as quickly as possible is a priority, I think, certainly from game week 34. So I would be tempted if I were you. It doesn't make any sense in my head because Son is absolutely fantastic at the moment. But in the interest of balancing game week 36, City might have a really good double game week there. If not in 37, you're going to want City options without any chips. And Spurs have a difficult double in 36. So you're going to want to move to a City player like KDB at some point. So whether it's in 34 or 35, I think it's a fairly decent option if you can maintain that squad structure.
Yeah, it's a great point you make. It's balancing the benefit of one player with the detriment of having that player and what it means in terms of not being able to do other moves. And so for me, having KDB in the team is great. And all of that stuff sounds really good, but it means that I can't afford Cancelo and I can't afford Robertson. And I go into double game week 36 with 2 Liverpool players as opposed to 3, when everyone's going to be free hitting and bench boosting and triple captaining and all those types of things. And it means that I've only got a Laporte instead of a Cancelo. Now, I'm kind of okay with that. But all of that sacrifice for a KDB when I could have Foden and Cancelo and Laporte and Robertson, yeah, these are the considerations I've got to weigh up. I hear what you're saying about KDB. I think he is kind of the talisman of that team, or he seems to be at the moment. And so, yeah, whilst the allure of KDB is strong, I will need to consider what the implications are for the rest of my team and my budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's expensive. He's like 12 million or so, isn't he? So it eats up more of your budget. And Son's about 11 now, I think. He might even be more than that.
He went up today, 11-1. He's getting expensive, Son.
11-1, that is expensive, but he's the player in form at the moment. Can't be ignored when he's scoring hat-tricks week after week. But yes, your captaincy is on Harvey Barnes. Let's finish off by talking about your decision to captain. If you don't make any changes, if you don't bring in any more double game week players, are you definitely set on captaining Barnes for the double game week?
Yeah, I actually like captaining Barnes over Saka. I just like the fixtures against Newcastle and Everton. I think that
Yeah.
they're great. He's had his rest now as well. I'm not too concerned about that. If I had Madison there, I'd captain Madison over Barnes. But yeah, I just like Barnes over Saka. I think the Chelsea away fixture is tough for Arsenal at the moment. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a tough double game week for Arsenal and their attack. And so, yeah, I'd favour Barnes. If I don't make any changes, I'd probably leave it as is. I'd be tempted just to captain Son, really, and just continue riding that. But yeah, as things stand, I'd leave it like this. But yeah, I've got 2 free transfers. I need to make some moves, and I don't imagine the captaincy would stay on Barnes. I just think he's better than Saka this week. That's the main reason.
So it sounds like with the 2 free transfers you're going to make, I reckon you're going to be focusing on the single game week players. I think, what have you got? 6 doubles already? I think that's more than enough, especially
Yeah.
some of those, are Veghorst and Breuer and pretty uninspiring picks, to be honest. So I imagine you'll be wanting to offload those guys anyway.
Yeah.
But it's weighing up whether you want to do that now or in 1 game week's time. You could just make 1 transfer this week and then sort it out next week.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if I do want to go the KDB route, I'd probably downgrade Veghorst, or even like a Doherty or Cody, because they're the ones who I've got some cash in that I can afford to lose. And I would make maybe just the 1 transfer this week, save some money, and then go Son to KDB next week. I prefer Son over KDB this game week. I think with City having played Liverpool in the league, City have Liverpool again in the cup, then they've got the Champions League, and then they play Brighton. I just prefer Son over KDB. So if I make the KDB move, it'll be next game week, and to kind of preempt that, I would look to make some savings this week.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it. Preemptive saving transfers just enable you further down the line. So
Yeah.
it sounds very sensible.
I just want to ask you one quick question before we have a look at your team, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for
What are
it.
your thoughts on Son to Bruno?
I'm not sure. I think Bruno is only really good for this week. I don't think you want him going forward. So it's a short-term move that basically takes up 2 free transfers, 1 now and 1 later. And I think with the scarcity of free transfers until the end of the season, we only have 7. Do you really want to waste using 2 free transfers on a hokey cokey when Bruno might even get fewer points than Son this week? I think it's probably sensible to keep Son. If you're going to captain Bruno and you won't captain Son, then it might give you a little bit of upside to do it. But I think all in all, those 2 free transfers are much more powerful to use elsewhere in bolstering your squad, especially as you don't have any chips left. So I think it's probably unnecessary.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that.
Thing is, I counsel restraint or counsel good advice, but I never follow it myself for my own team.
Yeah.
It's always terrible. But yes, let's move on to my team and finish off the video by looking at that. I haven't made the move yet, but I have put in my intentions, which are Rafinha to Maddison, who has the captain's armband. But otherwise, it's looking okay. Ramsdale in goal with the double game week. Difficult choosing whether to play Dubravka or Ramsdale. I think Dubravka has slightly better fixtures, but Ramsdale's probably more likely to keep a clean sheet against Southampton and then maybe struggle with a few saves against Chelsea. We'll see. I think probably Ramsdale just sneaks it for me. But yeah, backline of Alexander-Arnold, James and Laporte. That's all right. Maybe, if I had Cancelo, I'd feel a little bit better, but hoping that Laporte can sort of match Cancelo for his price. And then a midfield's looking pretty good. Salah at home to Man United. He's been struggling recently. I really wish that he'd get back to form quickly so that Yeah, it'd be just make it easier to captain him and stuff like that. But it seems like slowly, I think people are getting off Salah slowly but surely. So maybe he becomes more and more of a differential as time goes by, and more of a rank boost when he does well. But it might be one of those occasions where we just hold on to Salah for the rest of the season and he just doesn't do anything, which is stubborn from us. But we know what kind of player he can be. And I think Liverpool have to chase down City for the rest of the season. So any slip up from City, and the pressure's on. And I think Salah being so part of that attacking side, like a massive, massive part of it on penalties, I'm not sure I could ever get rid of him, to be honest.
Yeah.
Really difficult. But yeah, Saka with the double, Maddison with my free transfer captain. Little bit wary of his minutes, but fingers crossed he plays in both. Kulusevski instead of Son. He's doing pretty well, Kulusevski, for his price. He's just not quite matching Son, and that's hurting my rank. But I'm very happy with Kulu. Very happy. And then Foden to finish off midfield. I'm really happy owning Foden, especially from game week 34 onwards, where City have absolutely fantastic fixtures. And Foden seems to be playing most of the games. Yeah, he missed out on the Champions League last week. He started this one. I think just because of his recovery time, his youth. I think Pep actually name-checked him when he was talking about the players that are so vital to the end of the season. Fast recovery times, never get injured. I think he mentioned KDB, Sterling, Foden, amongst others. So I'm happy owning Foden. He hasn't done anything yet, but hopefully he can get amongst the points going forwards. And then Lacazette and Kane to finish it up. And now Lacazette will definitely be a cash cow for me after this game week, looking to get rid, either to get another bench filler to go alongside Gelhardt in someone like Sam Greenwood from Leeds, who's like 4.5 million, or someone like Mateta, who's slightly more expensive but actually plays. But that money will go to fund moves like Kulusevski to Havertz in advance of the Game Week 36 double, where Chelsea have a double-double, and maybe even a Cody or a Doherty up to a Robertson or a Cancelo, someone like that. Those are my moves, I think, going forwards, and I think that will bolster this side even further.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that you want to downgrade Lacazette. We spoke about that last week and about the value and how viable is it to keep him in your team at 8.4. And interesting to hear you talk about your thoughts in defence, because most people have Doherty now and he's injured. Looks like he's out for the rest of the season. I'm sure people are wondering what to do with that position. Connor Cody as well. You've got a representation from Liverpool, Chelsea and City in defence. If you're bringing in another premium defender, which of those three teams are you looking to double up on in defence?
Really difficult. I think I'd like to have Robertson. He would probably be my favourite, because I'm not sure. We did some in-depth analysis about Cancelo versus Laporte last week and even the week before. I'm not 100% sure that the conversion from Cancelo really gives the additional benefit over Laporte. Especially Laporte tends to have some chances, and I think he even got a really decent chance against Liverpool at the weekend, Laporte. I think it was only an offside or something. Anyway,
it was offside, and tipped onto the post.
Yeah, exactly. So just goes to show that he does have some attacking threat, just a different kind of attacking threat. But it will really come down to money, and money will be tight. I think Lacazette down to a Sam Greenwood gives me enough money to do Kulu to Havertz and a Doherty to Cancelo. I think I'm like 0.2 out to get Robertson. But I think if I had the money, then I would go Robertson, because I think he adds just a little bit more than Cancelo, even though City have better fixtures. So I think both of them are decent, though, to be honest. But it looks like a 4-5-1 until the end of the season. I think that's probably along the template. Nothing really too special, too different from anyone else. But I will need to decide whether I free hit in 36 or 37. I think probably it will be a free hit in 37, because I don't have that much intention to bring in Aston Villa or Palace players, or even more Leicester players. So I think I'll try and build for 36, with lots of premium assets, and then free hit in 37. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. FPL Harry in the chat's asking which chips you've got left.
Yeah,
Just a free hit.
Yeah, just one
right?
free hit left. So I think probably the strategy will be to get through 33. As we've been discussing this video, we've seen that there might not be that much more of an advantage for free hitters compared to the ceilings of the single game weekers. So I'm just going to risk it. I'm going to go with this team with 4 doublers for 33, and then probably use my free hit in 37, because I think when we're talking about free hitting in 36, I completely get it. I get it that you can get an absolutely fantastic team, maybe full of slightly different options, like the KDBs, like, I don't know, other premium options that we can't necessarily get to or build up to now because of the squad structure. But equally so, I think we're going to want these premium players in advance of Game Week 36, especially with City's good run of fixtures. So I think we just kill 2 birds with 1 stone and try and get a really good side full of premium players in advance of 36, and then we're sort of sorted for 36 anyway. I don't mind playing Harry Kane in their difficult double game week.
Yeah.
So free hit 37. It seems like that's the solution.
Is the free hit in 37 more appealing for you if City double in 36 or if they double in 37?
That's a really good question. I think I would have to, if City double in 37, then I would have to start thinking about free hitting in 36 maybe, because City would have a double in 37, Chelsea would have a double in 37, Liverpool would be the only team out of those 3 that don't, but they have a fantastic fixture against Saints, who we know can capitulate against some of the tougher opposition. So if you double up with City, if you treble up with City, then a free hit in 36 might be slightly better, and it would allow you to get triple Liverpool, triple Chelsea, maybe other teams that we're not considering as template right now. So I think maybe just saving the free hit gives me greater flexibility in adjusting to what might happen with that City fixture later down the line. And I think that's another reason why not to free hit in 33.
Yeah, I think your team's really well set up, and your team almost perfectly encapsulates the discussion we've had in the stream so far. It's the battle of the single game week players who have great fixtures and play for a great team versus the triple United and the triple Leicester and the Southampton players and the Burnley players, and who's going to come out on top. It's going to be a really interesting game week, and we're kind of standing on the precipice of more chips, right? We're going to see wild cards in 34, bench boosts are coming out in 36. So we're about to kind of go through the roller coaster ride once again.
It's really interesting, though, that I think if someone's got a wild card in 34 and they want to use it then, wonder whether the upside of taking hits to get more double game week players is actually profitable. It's a really difficult one. I think if it was a blank game week where some of these premium sides didn't play and they were taking hits to get United players, I think it would probably be a bit better. But now we know that these premium singlers can potentially score more than them. I don't know whether I'd be taking hits to get lots of double game week players almost to dead end in 33 and then wildcard out. It's a really interesting game week, as you said. And I think if the variance kings are there and they're like going to punish us, I think it could go one way or the other. And that uncertainty is kind of terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. I was looking at one of the features of live FPL that I really enjoy is seeing the rank increase or decrease that particular players give you. And for all the lamenting concerning Son this week, I had a 12k rank rise because of Son, but I had a 12k rank drop because of Kulusevski. So it's important to keep in mind the effective ownership, and while Son's score was huge, it can be mitigated by having the right players elsewhere. And so when you are making the decisions for your team, we've spoken about it with my team, do I get sucked in with the Bruno Fernandes or the KDB? And, you're looking at the likes of Laporte and thinking maybe Cancelo. You might miss out in one particular instance, but it's obviously it's a cliche, but you've got 10 other players there in your starting 11 who are going to earn you points. And it's about having the right balance to your team.
Absolutely. Balance is key. And I'm sure we'll strike that balance for game week 33. Fingers crossed the variance is kind to us. But yes, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, Ryan. Great chat as usual.
Thanks, Ted. It was a quick one tonight.
Yeah, a quick one. We went on for 2 hours last week, so we'll give you guys an early one. Yeah, okay. Thanks again, guys, and best of luck for game week 33. Enjoy Fantasy Football Scouts week of content. There'll be plenty coming up. But yes, all the best, and see you later.